In 24 hours, we're going to see a massive change in Bitcoin because fair value accounting will no longer be optional in the US, but mandatory. Michael Saylor is one of the biggest price catalysts. We're going to look at what this means for the Bitcoin price. Also, we now see Forbes magazine confirming a Bitcoin reserve strategy in the U.S. They also write about a $15 trillion Bitcoin boom coming in 2021. So they're making a massive prediction here. On the other hand, they confirm here that the reserve strategy in the USA is now complete. We live in incredibly exciting times, but tomorrow something could really change forever here at Bitcoin. Michael Saylor always talks about how fair value accounting is such an important step for Bitcoin and the 3 reasons Bitcoin needs to reach a minimum price of $13 million. First off, we have the Bitcoin ETFs, which we already have. Secondly, there are large banks that offer Bitcoin as a loan. We don't have that fully yet, but there are some offers already, and we need fair value accounting, which is going to be mandatory starting tomorrow. Michael Saylor actually made a tweet about this, and the tweet is from December 13th, 2023. Back then, he already predicted it here, saying that the FASB, the Financial Accounting Standards Board, officially adopted the fair value accounting method for Bitcoin, which will apply for fiscal years starting December 15th. 2024 applies. This adjustment to the accounting standards will make it easier for companies worldwide to use Bitcoin as a treasury reserve asset. I'm not entirely sure here, because Michael Saylor is speaking after December 15th. So I'm not sure if it's on December 15th or after December 15th. I'm just going to assume it starts from the 16th. December. That applies then. And the important thing is that the fiscal year does not end on December 31st, but on December 15th and 16th. The fair value accounting rule will soon apply, encouraging companies to hold Bitcoin by reflecting unrealized gains on balance sheets. This change, advocated by Michael Saylor, is crucial for large firms like Tesla and Meta, potentially leading to significant developments and a bullish 2025. MicroStrategy buys Bitcoin for US dollars. So when the Bitcoin price is in US dollars, they have Bitcoin on their balance sheet. Now, if Bitcoin goes up, they have unrealized USD gains, but their balance sheet still shows US dollars as the value of the Bitcoin. Without fair value accounting, Bitcoin gains aren't shown on the balance sheet when all companies follow fair value accounting. If Bitcoin's value rises, unrealized gains on the balance sheet mean more profits. He insists on implementation due to small hurdles unnoticed by most, without options to show unrealized gains. It's a big problem. Many believe 2025 could be ultra-bullish due to this rule. Forbes reports Trump confirms the U.S. Bitcoin reserve strategy. They predict a $15 trillion Bitcoin price. He keeps saying it needs to be implemented, because these are really small hurdles that a regular person wouldn't even think about. But when you have a big company like Tesla, Meta, and so on, and you have shareholders, you have to present your financials as well as possible. If there aren't any options to reflect unrealized gains on the balance sheet, then you have a big problem. According to Michael Saylor, that's changing now, and that's why something really big could kick off in the next 24 hours. That's why a lot of people believe that 2025 could be ultra-bullish, partly because of this fair value accounting rule. And then something really fascinating happened. We see a Forbes report, and they're already talking about it, saying, "Let's fucking go, it's happening." Trump confirms the reserve plan strategy, or the Bitcoin reserve strategy of the US. And this is even being reported by Forbes, one of the major magazines here in the US, confirming that the US is pursuing a Bitcoin reserve strategy. They even go further, saying in the headline, 15 trillion price boom predicted, which means a $15 trillion Bitcoin price boom is predicted. And they're not talking about the Bitcoin price itself. They're actually referring to the Bitcoin market capitalization. So the Bitcoin market capitalization is going to hit 15 trillion. And with the 15 trillion, that's a really, really important goal because it would mean flipping the gold market, meaning Bitcoin would have surpassed the market capitalization of gold. I would even go further to say that to surpass the gold market capitalization, you probably need to hit around 20 trillion or something like that, because gold will continue to rise in market capitalization as it benefits from, let's say, expanding money supply and so on. So to really surpass the gold market capitalization, you shouldn't just aim for 15 trillion, but more like 20 or even 23 trillion so that you can actually catch up to gold. And a lot of people believe that Bitcoin has the potential, and there's increasing demand to sell gold and buy Bitcoin for the central bank's balance sheet. I was just talking to a few people here on the beach in El Zonte about how it would be the ultimate move for the US to offload their gold reserves. Maybe there aren't even any gold reserves left in Fort Knox. That would make the effect even crazier, or they might just sell the certificates for gold that doesn't actually exist. And the other folks, the BRICS nations betting on gold, are going to look pretty foolish when the whole gold price suddenly crashes. It's not going to drop to zero, but it might crash pretty hard. With Bitcoin, exactly. That would basically be the ultimate speculative attack against the BRICS nations. Safidian Amis is the author of the Bitcoin Standard, and he's about to release a new book called The Gold Standard. There's something really, really interesting to add to this, so listen up.
Characteristics of why gold has been the go-to for representing value for 4,000 years. No, it holds value really well because it's super hard to increase the supply of gold. It's really tough to boost the supply of gold. Every year, the supply of gold only increases by about 1.5% to 2%. And that means that people who hold it as money end up doing really well for themselves, while those who hold other things don't fare as well. And that's true for gold. And that's what turned gold into money for pretty much the whole world at the start of the 20th century. Then governments come along and start using their debt as money. The average fiat currency supply grew at around 14% per year from 1960 to 2020. Fiat currencies grew in supply at about 14% per year. 14% per year means you lose half of the value stored in money over 5 years. Overall, fiat currencies have increased in supply by about 14% each year. So we went from 1.5% to 14%, which is about a tenfold increase in the supply growth rate. And 14% per year means that, on average, you lose half of the value of your money over 5 years. So you end up losing half of the value of your money over 5 years. That's the typical experience with fiat. Of course, some currencies are better than the average, like the US dollar and the euro. They only increase by about 7 or 8% per year. Some currencies are way worse. They can increase by 20, 50, or even 100% sometimes per year. But on average, it's just constantly increasing in supply, so its value keeps going down. And because its value keeps dropping, that pushes everyone to not save and to take on a lot of debt. And that's why everyone is in debt, and that's what Bitcoin solves. If we go back to having hard money, where money isn't just debt anymore, we won't need to keep monetizing debt, and we won't have to get everyone involved to become a that's life in order for us to have a wonderful. That is just a commodity that doesn't require an about it again to Thetford.
Well, I thought that was a very, very strong statement here on CNBC on television. You have to accept that such statements are made here in the USA, and in Germany people are still asleep. Okay, now there might be a bit of buzz around the Bitcoin reserve from the FDP, the AFD, whatever, just some half-hearted attempts, but you can't compare that to the level of discussion happening here in the US. I mean, it's on a whole different scale. Here, Safidian Amis clearly states that gold has maintained very good monetary properties over the centuries and still does, because the money supply can't just be expanded indefinitely. On average, it was just about 1.5%, and it still is in terms of the new gold supply coming into the market. And that's why we had a really solid economic system here for a long time, based on a gold standard. He'll go into that further in his book. And then he says here, the difference is, under the gold standard, we had about 1.5% inflation per year for a long time. Then we basically switched to a fiat standard, and suddenly from 1.5% inflation, we jumped to 14% inflation per year. That means the value of money gets cut in half in just 5 years. You really have to take a moment to appreciate that. You put your money in a savings account, and within 5 years, its value is cut in half. And it's not the 2% that the ECB and others keep talking about. That's just the real inflation. The 14% is the real inflation. He mentions worse fiat currencies that hyperinflated, like Zimbabwe's. He says everyone is a debt slave now, unlike the gold standard era when gold meant no debt money, just hard money. He also suggests returning to hard money, as the gold standard failed, but Bitcoin offers more advantages. Thus, freeing yourself from debt slavery by embracing Bitcoin makes sense. And he also said that we now have to go back to hard money. The gold standard has failed, but Bitcoin has further advantages over the gold standard. And that's why it makes so much sense to get out of debt slavery by simply opening up to Bitcoin. You don't have to do anything complicated, just hold on to Bitcoin, save in Bitcoin, and not in dollars, or else you're just a debt slave. And the problem is, when you build a system on debt slavery, you really have no incentive to save. Instead, you have an incentive to rack up more and more debt just to keep the system going. Nation states do that, companies do that, but individuals do it too. We're seeing that credit card overdraft rates, or more accurately, the overdraft fees on credit cards, are at an all-time high. We've never had so many overdrawn credit cards. That basically means the system is massively leveraged, that we have a level of leverage we've never seen before. And that also means we have an extremely fragile system because a lot of people just can't afford their standard of living anymore. So they need a second job, a third job, a fourth job. When that's not enough, people have to max out their credit card debt, take out personal loans or get home loans. And instead of buying a house with that home loan, they just buy their liverwurst, beer, bread, or whatever else people buy, like their Netflix subscription and so on. And that's a twisted system. And with Bitcoin, you would eliminate debt slavery and have hard money again. And hard money means that saving actually pays off, that people don't overconsume as much, and that the time preference changes. Stephanimus talks a lot about that in his book, The Bitcoin Standard. It always makes it clear that time preference is really crucial here. You can also let me know in the comments below if your time preference has changed. So, are you saving more since you found out about Bitcoin, or are you still living it up? I hardly know anyone for whom Bitcoin has made them spend more money. I know a lot of people who basically say, hey, since I got to know Bitcoin, I spend a lot less money. Yesterday, people even commented, hey, how can you spend Bitcoin at all? Because I mentioned in the video that I do spend my Bitcoin from time to time, and the incentive you have is basically to hold on to Bitcoin because it's so valuable. Replace Bitcoin spent. Fiat money is trash. So spend and replace, I have to be honest about that because you just have the incentive to trash fiat money. It's just cheap, let's say, paper money that you might as well use to clean the toilet or wipe your butt or something, but definitely not to save in. For saving, you just use Bitcoin. That's just cheap, let's say, paper money that you might as well use to clean the toilet or wipe your butt or something, but definitely not to save in. You just use Bitcoin for saving. And if you still want to buy Bitcoin, then I'll give you a link below to Bitcoin, especially for beginners now, armchair suitable, the easiest way to buy Bitcoin in Europe. And with the code BitcoinHotel, you can get up to 20% off the fees when buying Bitcoin. And now, make sure to subscribe here. We really need to pick up the pace with the channel so that people truly understand how important Bitcoin is for them, because most folks are still in hibernation. Absolutely. If you haven't subscribed yet, hit that subscribe button here. It doesn't cost you anything, but it means the world to me. You don't have to, of course, but it would be really, really awesome if you did. See you later. Peace out.